Welcome to a talk questioning the validity of the Russian fox experiment. My name is Isaiah Hamilton. Beginning in 1960 at the Russia Academy of Sciences Institute of Cytology and Genetics, a Russian geneticist took 130 silver foxes from Soviet fur farms. A picture of the fur fox can be seen here on the right. They then artificially selected and bred these foxes for many generations and selected for tameness. The thought was that after many generations of this process that they could domesticate the wild foxes. So this leads to the question that you may be thinking, what is domestication syndrome? Well, domestication syndrome can generally be defined as the correlation between tameness and its defining physical changes within a species. If the syndrome even exists has been the topic of discussion as of recently for many scientists. So this brings us to the question, how could domestication syndrome be falsified or validated? Biologist Eleanor Carlson and her colleagues have been the frontrunners of trying to falsify the silver fox experiment. Naturally, as a result, they also began to question domestication syndrome's existence within itself. It was then speculated whether or not the foxes were truly wild and that some of the traits that are linked to domestication existed priorly to artificial selection beginning. These speculations were brought about after a photo surfaced of a fur farmer holding a silver fox that appeared to be tamed. This is shown below. It is important nowadays to consider the implications of the silver fox experiment. Physical changes in the foxes, such as floppy ears, spotted coats, and smaller teeth, were claimed to have surfaced after 6 to 10 generations of selection by the Russian scientists. This is a point of ambiguity for opposing scholars, however, and inevitably, the Russian scientists associated these characteristics with domestication syndrome. These other scholars acknowledge the study's importance, end quote, in selecting on behavioral traits and showing that they can create populations that have very different behaviors. Alternatives to the domestication syndrome were extrapolated after realizing the vagueness of what was considered defining traits of domestication. This led Carlson to draft and test a new model considering 2 criteria, one being that traits must appear shortly after breeding for domestication, and the other that there must exist a correlation between the frequency and severity of the traits that change over generations and the degree of tameness for that species. After this model was applied to domesticated mammals, there was no species found that met both requirements, thus invalidating a shared syndrome of domestication across all species. Now looking further into Carlson's study, looking at a figure shown on the right, we see that Carlson used a wider range of traits that spanned many species of animals. Across the board, however, there was no trait that was found in all of the animals. Out of all of the traits, coat color, brain size, and jaw length were the most highly conserved amongst the animals. This figure supports the claim that traits can sometimes trend towards domestication, but also proves that there is no common experience for all species as their tameness has increased. Another one of Carlson's studies investigated how well-supported traits of species are in regards to their association to domestication. More than half of the traits Carlson looked at had no supporting data, which can be determined as the no data blocks in the figure. The study shows exactly how outdated domestication syndrome truly is, and moreover, how it has failed to have been revised since the Russia experiment's beginning. Many contrasting opinions surface as a result of Carlson's arguments over the Russia experiment's factuality. Some believe that domestication research should not be limited to very vague and unclear definitions surrounding the hypotheses of domestication. Others opposingly thought that domestication syndrome cannot be generalized across all species and that it should be viewed as varying from species to species. There are those as well who support the Russia experiment and find it extremely unlikely that these traits could have perpetuated throughout the fox's genetics while remaining hidden prior to the breeding beginning. So moving forward, Carlson suggests that we focus less on domestication syndrome and rather pinpoint sequential events of species self-domesticating as a response to human intervention. She even adds that human intervention is growing steadily into wild spaces, thus it is more realistic that these species are adapting us rather than the other way around.